So today's topic is continuing on what we were talking about last week. If you remember, we're working on two different architectures, right? The first architecture is most everything is done from the front end, right? We download HTML, we download JavaScript, and then from JavaScript using jQuery or Angular or whatnot, a client-side technology, we go off and retrieve data from either a third-party API or we go back to our own server, right? And get data from our own database. Right? So today, I'd like to show you how to go out to a third-party API, right? Somebody else's database, right? Who has exposed their database through a web API, right? And they provide the data in JSON format, okay? And then I'll like to show you, if we have time, I'd like to show you how to do the same thing, but using AngularJS. Right, so that'll give us a nice segue into the AngularJS framework. Okay, so let's see. Let's open this up. And let's open a website. We'll go back to our essentials. Okay, so in here, yes. Would help, huh? There we go. Right, in here, in CS5610, we were working on several experiments. We had started playing around with jQuery and jQuery UI. So I like to play around with jQuery's AJAX mechanism. Right, so let's create a folder in here where we can play with AJAX. Right, so we'll say here AJAX. And in here, we'll create first our first experiment, and we'll load jQuery, where do we put it? Let's see, where is it? I guess we put it under jQuery UI, or we could put it in a common place, right? We could put it maybe way up here. Right, we could drop it. We could copy everything that we need from there. Oh no, actually no, maybe that's not it, right? Maybe this is it. There it is, right? So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to put it in a common directory way at the top there, and then we'll load it from here. Okay. So let's see. Let's load jQuery. So this is AJAX. Right. That's the title of this example. This is AJAX. So let's see. Let's load this script. Let's go up one. What happened? Source. Let's go up one. No, that's not it. Up one. No. One more. Maybe here. Yes. Is that recording? I believe I'm recording. I'm recording, yeah. And actually, if you could go to my channel and verify that indeed I am broadcasting. It's always a good idea to go there and check to see that I'm all right, so I'm going to load jQuery. I'm going to load jQuery. There it is. And I'm going to verify that indeed I do have jQuery loaded just by going here and giving it an init function, a default init function, and just saying hello here. Alert, hello from jQuery. So let's run that. Okay, hello from jQuery. So jQuery is up and running. Okay, and so what we want to be able to do is go out and retrieve data. Up to this point, the data that we've had, well, actually, we haven't had any data, have we? It has been static contents, right? Just HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? We've programmatically generated content, right? With for loops and while loops and if statements and whatnot, right? And also event handlers with clicks here and there, right? And we have generated content dynamically, with these event handlers, and we've kept also a data model, right? A local data model, right? Which was a JSON array, I believe, right? It was an array of objects, correct? And then we would store it locally, we would retrieve it, then we would convert it back into JSON, and then we would update the UI dynamically, right? Is that what we did last week? Correct? Well, this data really should not live here, right? It should live elsewhere. It should live in our database, right? So that we can, log in and each person might have their own content. We would like to be able to save this back to the database, right? And then on demand, we would like to ask for the data from the server, and the data would come and render it here. Yes? Well, we don't have the server yet, right? We don't have the database yet. Let's play around with somebody else's database, okay? Somebody else's database, somebody else's data, right? And see how would we retrieve the data? How would we retrieve the data? And once we have it, how would we display it? Okay? As we progress, and next week we start talking about Node.js and MongoDB and whatnot, then we'll start talking about, okay, well, we know what to do on the client with the data, right? We know how to ask for the data. We know how to render it. Let's actually store the data, right? And let's actually, serve the data back to the client, okay? So right now we're going to use somebody else's server, somebody else's database, okay? In the next couple of weeks, it'll be our own server, our own database, okay? So slowly and surely, we are working our way towards the server, okay? So, but still, we're at the client using somebody else's server. Next week will be our server. Okay, so we're going to ask for data, and we're going to ask for data using a technique called AJAX. Okay, so AJAX, it's an API. It stands for Asynchronous JavaScript API for XML, right? Asynchronous meaning that as the page has loaded, right? As the page has loaded, we can now, right, go off and asynchronously ask for, make network connections to any server, well, usually back to our own server, typically, without having to reload the data, but without having to load the page, right? We can ask make these network connections, right? And then wait for the server to come back and say, hey, here's the data that you were asking for. And that's the asynchronous part, meaning, in JavaScript, there's only one thread, right? So there's no real multi-threading. There's only one thread, and we don't want to block that thread because that thread is, is busy updating the UI and responding to clicks, right? What we want to do is send off this request to the server, right? And instead of making a block, usually when you make a function call, right, all these APIs is through function calls, right? Typically, when you make a function call, you block until the function comes back. Right? Well, the thing here is that our function call is to somebody else's domain, right? That might take a while to come back, right? And it might actually time out, or the server might not be available, or the network is down or something, right? So we don't want to block and wait for that function to come back. We want to do asynchronously, meaning I'll send off the request and I won't wait. I'm just going to keep going and keep listening for user clicks and user drags, right? Because again, I only have this one thread. I can't block it. Otherwise, my page is blocked. Make sense? Right? So how AJAX works is that I make the request. The server eventually, when it has when is ready to respond, it will call me back through a method that I'm going to give it. I give it a method, and it will come back with the data by calling me, right, a function, right, that I give it. Right? It'll come back and say, oh, here's the data you asked for, and it'll pass it to me through a function call that I give it, right? It'll notify me, here's the data. Now that it comes back to me and I have the data, I can now then go off and do all sorts of things and re-update the UI. Make sense? Right? Now, it used to be that it was specifically for XML. It has grown beyond just XML, right? Today, actually, the more prevalent format for this data is JSON, right? It's becoming more and more common that we use JSON as the data format, right, of exchanging format between the client and the server, right? but XML was and still is a very popular format for exchanging data. Okay, so we're not going to use the X portion of AJAX, right? We're going to use the JSON portion. Okay, we're still going to be asynchronous, right? It is the API. It's a JavaScript API. Actually, we're not going to even use the JavaScript API. We're going to use jQuery's API, which is it's a library on top of the JavaScript API, right? It's a cleaner, it's an easier API. Okay. All right. So the API is as follows. You say $.ajax, right? That's how everything starts, and you give it where do you want to connect to, right? You give it options on what you want to connect to. The way you connect to is you give it a URL, right? There is this server, right, at a particular URL that is accepting requests, right, HTTP requests, and it will respond presumably with JSON, okay, with parameters. So I found as I where is it? My movie. I had it. Where is it? This is my movie JSON API. I had the URL here. Why is it not here? My films. There it is. My API films. That's it. That's what it was. I put it on the web dev. Right. So I was showing you this last week. Right. We ran out of time, and this is a service, right, that uses the IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, to serve data about movies. Okay. And it accepts URLs, and down here, this is the entire documentation about how to create the URL, right? You can ask it for all sorts of things, for actors and movies and all sorts of salary, spouses, in what movie did it star, all sorts of things, right? But down here has an example of what those URLs look like, right? So here, for instance, we have it says if you want to know what the URL is, depending on what these arguments are, you can provide this example and then generate the URL. Right? Here's a URL. Here's a URL that if I copy it, if I copy this, right, and I go to a brand new browser window and I paste that URL, it comes back with some JSON. Oops. It says no parameters in form, so it looks like I missed some parameters, right? So it gave me some error message. Oops. Oh yeah. So yeah, I was supposed to give it the title of a movie. Okay. So I'll give it Avatar. I'll say search. So I'll say I'll copy the link address. I'll paste it here again. There it is. So it comes back with JSON. The directors here is James Cameron, filming locations, the IMDb ID, right? If you want to go and ask the original IMDb database for this, is there. We have the plot, we have the rating, running time, the shorter plot. We have posters, right? So this is an actual image. Oops. Let's go back. I think this is an image that I should be able to copy. URL poster. I can copy link address. I should be able to paste it here. Okay, there's the image, right? So I could use all this data for within my program, right? My web API, within my web. So anyway, so this URL, I'll take it. Notice that the only thing that changes the URL is that, notice the arguments. Notice that here we have the title. Everything else is standard, right? The only thing that changes is avatar. So I can make this an argument, right, that I could change. Somebody else could, we can have our own users, right, type this data and then create this URL dynamically and ask for different data for different movies. Make sense? Right? So let's copy that URL. Let's copy the URL. And within my experiment, I'm going to paste that here, href, URL. And I just want to see what it looks like. Get avatar. Right. So I'm going to refresh my page. My page, right? If I click on it, I'm going to go and replace the entire page with the JSON. Right. So that URL definitely only returns JSON. Right. Just text. This is what it returns. It returns text. It just returns text. Right. My browser is smart enough to understand that there's JSON and formats it pretty. Okay. All right. All right. Let's go back to my page. So what I want to be able to do is not do this by somebody clicking. I want to do this by somebody, you know, I want to give it a UI, right? A nice UI and get the response and format the response, right? So let's do that. I want to do this programmatically, right? So I want to do this. Here's the URL. That's the URL. I'm just going to paste the URL. There it is. I just want to be able to perhaps the title here. I want the title to be an argument that I can type as opposed to being hard-coded. We'll do that in a second. Or maybe give it an input field for people to type in. I can now, this is gonna asynchronous go off to the URL, right? And programmatically retrieve the data, but I don't want to have it block, right? So it is gonna do it asynchronously. It's not going to block. And when it comes back, it's gonna call me back at a function that I give it as an argument. And the way you give it is to tell it, if the query was successful, then I want you to call this function and pass me whatever the response is. Okay? And I'm just going to do a console log. I'm going to paste the response here. I'm going to print it out to the console. Make sense? All right. So let's see. If I view the element here and I look at the console. Oops, 12. I'm missing a curly bracket somewhere. Refresh. Oh, okay. So it did work. So notice that something went wrong. It said you know, you're trying to do a cross origin, right? You're trying to, meaning this script. Your script was downloaded from this domain, localhost 5770, okay? But you're trying to go to another domain, www.myapifilms.com, right? And the browser is stopping me because that's considered a security risk, right? But that's okay. There's a hack around this problem. If the site supports JSONP, which it does, right? Notice that the format that we can ask for is JSON. We can ask it for JSONP, or we can ask it for XML. Okay, we're not necessarily interested in XML, but it could be an option, definitely, right? If you're doing this from the server, then XML is a better option. If you're doing this from the server, we're doing it from the client. Okay. And our client is a JavaScript client. So obviously, it would like to have its content already in JavaScript format, right? So it can iterate over it. But if you're on the server and you're coding in C#, right? C# has plenty of mappers, right, to map XML to C# objects, right? So you can do data mapping between objects and XML. So if you're doing on the server, then it would be preferable to have the XML format as opposed to JSON. Although you could also handle JSONP or JSON in the server as well, but XML is more friendly for server-side access. Okay, but we're doing client-side access anyway. So JSONP is a hack, right, that allows us to get around this security concerns, this security issue. Notice that the browser is you know, if I have here a reference to an image, right? If I have a reference to an image, which I did in a second ago, let's see. Right, this image, if I copy the link, copy, right? And I make a an IMG here, IMG source, and I give it the image, right? Notice that my page has no problems showing the image, right? So it really has no problem going off to another domain and downloading stuff, right? The browser is okay, right? The browser is okay with going out to some other server and retrieving a resource, right? It's happy with downloading images from some other domain, right? It's happy downloading. Remember when we had jQuery, right? Downloading from a CDN, remember that? It was happy downloading JavaScript from another domain. It didn't stop me. It's not happy with me making AJAX invocations to another domain, right? So what JSONP does, it says, well, since you're not stopping me from downloading JavaScript, right? Well, maybe I could do that, right? Maybe I can fool you into thinking that you're downloading JavaScript as opposed to making a AJAX invocation. Okay, I can fool you into thinking that you're downloading a JavaScript file. Okay, and this would be a very special JavaScript file. Okay, it would be a JavaScript file that what it does is that, remember, what happens when the JavaScript file downloads? It executes immediately, right? Well, look at this. If we change this for the format to be JSONP, if we change this URL, notice about what's downloading here. It's an array, right? It's JSON. It's JSON formatted. But if I change this to be P, notice what it downloads. You see what it downloads? It downloads a method invocation with the data embedded in there. You see that? Okay. And if we look at the network, let's reload that. And we'll look at the header. Why is this not letting me? Okay, here's the query. Here it is, right? And we look at the header. We look at the response. Look at the response. See that? It's a method invocation with the data embedded in the method invocation. So it's downloading this text. Also, look at the headers. The response. Look at the response. Where is it? Here's the request headers. Look at the response headers. The response header says that this is text plain, right? But look at the headers when it's JSON, just regular JSON. Look at the headers. The response. Wait a minute. It's JSON. It's expecting application, right? It's expecting application, right? But with JSONP, so it's still expecting application. Anyway, because this is expecting, it's returning a method invocation. It's interpreting this text. Right? It's not interpreting it as JSON. It's interpreting it as a JavaScript file. Right? It's a JavaScript file that I might have downloaded from Google, or I might have downloaded from jQuery, or I might have downloaded from Bootstrap. Right? It didn't complain then. It's not complaining now. Right? It's not going to complain now. The way it's going to pass it to me, the data, is that I have to have a function called myAPIFilms, right? With a variable expectant that somebody's going to call this function and it's going to pass me the data. You see that? Right? That's how a JSONP works, right? It downloads a function, right? Well, actually, a function invocation. It downloads a function invocation. And I'm supposed to have a function, right, in my file that will be called by the downloaded JavaScript file. Okay, right? I can usually the JSONP mechanism also allows me, right? If we say JSONP and we do the request, usually it also allows me to ask it, copy the link. I'm going to paste that here. I'm going to paste that here instead. I'm going to replace this. Replace it. It should say JSONP. I don't know if this one, but does it have a callback? Let me see. Callback. No, it doesn't. Usually, when one of these APIs supports JSONP, usually, not always, it'll allow you to tell it what the function is called, right? What the function is called, so that it names the function with the name that you give it. Okay, because you're going to create a function here, local function, that it's supposed to call you, right? But it doesn't know the name of the function, right? Because it's your function in your script, in your file, right? So you can configure it. But jQuery is smart enough to not even have to have this callback material, right? It's going to say, oh, I know what the function name is because that's the function. I'm going to parse it. I can figure out what the name of the function is, and I'm going to create a function on the fly, right? And it's going to call me. We do have to tell it that the data type is JSONP. Right, it's not JSON. We're not expecting it's JSONP. Okay. Now let's try it. Let's try it now. Let's look at the source. Okay, and go to console. And let's reload. There it is, right? Now it's not complaining. Now it's not complaining. It is complaining about the headers, though. It is complaining about the headers. It says, I was expecting something different from the headers. I was expecting something different from the header as well. But anyway, it interpreted it as a JavaScript file that came back. Right? It says, I don't really know. I'm interpreting it as a JavaScript file. And here's the data that is coming back from that server. Now that I have it, I could parse this now. It's a JSON. It's an array. I can iterate over this array. Let's see, how many elements does it have? It has only one, and I believe it's only one because one of the arguments here is I believe there's like a limit or something. Limit. There was. See, limit 1. I could limit it to 10. Right, and I can try this again. There it is. So it comes back with lots of things here, right? It has a avatar, a Fire Nation, the hostile. I think this is a TV series Avatar, not the movie Avatar. Okay. There's another one here. Okay, when his brother is killed. I think that's the movie. That is the movie. What's this over here? Plot is unknown. Avatar 3. What? They're making a third Avatar? Oh, cool. Can't wait. It's a sequel to the 2009 global phenomenon. Okay, so this is Avatar 2, right? That's coming out. When is it coming out? 2017. Oh, man. I was hoping it was coming out this year. Anyway, what we want to be able to do is render this, right? So let's render it. Let's render it. Okay, so I'm gonna have here a function that says, something like function render movies, right? Movies. So here are movies. All right. So movies is an array, right? And what we want to do here is what? Let's see. We want to render it how? As tables. How do we want to render this? How about let's render just the titles first? All right, let's just play around with the titles. Let's look at the data that's coming back. Each one of these arrays. Let's see what's in here. We have the plot. We have the title. Let's render just the title for now. Okay. So let's see. Let's have here a UL, and this will be an ID movies, right? And presumably we're gonna put here an LI in there, right? All right, let's do that. And here are the movies. So instead of having a function here, I'm just going to use this function, render movies, right? So here it is. I'm just going to give it render movies. And it's going to receive the response, which I'm calling movies now. I'm just going to console and print it, just making sure, right? console log movies, just making sure that I still get the movies, right? Making sure this still works. Yeah, okay. I'm going to iterate over this, right? I'm going to iterate over this. So var m in movies, and each one of the movies. So this var movie is movies sub m, right? So I got the movie object. I can print out each movie, right? Movie. Let me take out the this console here. Let's try that. There they are. They're all the objects, each one of them. I can retrieve the title, right? I can retrieve the title and say var, the title is movie.title. Right? I can print out the title. There they are. They're the titles, right? And I can add them to the UL, right? I can add them to the UL. Let's grab the UL, var the UL. It's where? It's at ID movies. Is that what it is? Right? I'm going to empty it in case there was already garbage in there. I'm going to add a brand new LI, right? I'm going to say var LI dynamically. I can say LI. There it is, right? And I'm going to append just the title. And then I'm going to append the LI to the UL, right? Append LI. Let's see if that works. There it is. There's the UL, right? So notice that this content was dynamically generated from data that lives elsewhere. See that? Right? You see the pattern? Right? There is some server that has a URL. That URL is parameterized. We can parameterize it, right? And it returns with JSON, either JSON or JSONP. The newer servers support just plain old JSON, right? They don't have this security issue, okay? That's ideal, right? But not all of them support them. If they don't support JSON, they might support, most of them also support JSONP. If they don't support either, right, the only way is to use through the server, right, which we'll do next week, okay? You'll have to go to the server, your server, because your server allows you to make URL queries back to the server, right? And then your server goes off and does the access to the network, and then it comes back and it provides the JSON back to your client. Make sense? So your server is basically a proxy, okay? And Professor Rosala has a proxy that allows you to do this, right? So you don't have to write your own proxy, okay? If JSON is not supported and JSONP is not supported directly, you can go through Rosala's proxy. Right? You give it the URL to Professor Rosala's proxy. It, from the server, goes off and makes the network connection, comes back, and then gives you the response. Make sense? We'll look at that next week. All right. Nevertheless, we have data. Yes? We've got data. All right. Okay. Let's see. What else do we want to render? Let me remove this image here. Let me remove the image. We don't need that. There they are. This is the data. What else do we want to render? Let's see. How about the plot? Let's retrieve the plot. Right. So we have a plot. Okay. I'm going to append. Let's create a paragraph to hold the plot. So let's say var p equal $P, right? And in there, we're going to append and the plot. Actually, we don't need to create the p. Let's see, we can say plot, and then we can say we append the plot, and then we append to. We can say dot append to the li. If that works. There it is. There's the title and the plot. Title, plot, title, plot, title, plot, and so on and so forth. You see that, right? What else might we add here? Let's how about the image? Okay. let's see, the data that is coming back, we never printed it, did we? We should print the object again because I don't remember where the image was, right? So let's render the movie. Let's print the movie. Let's say console.log movies. Okay, so let's look at the objects. Each object, I believe, has a URL poster. Okay, so let's do that, right? Let's grab the URL poster. So plot, we want the URL poster. So we'll create an image for that, yes? All right, let's create an image. So we'll say, we'll create, we'll say IMG. We'll set the attribute, the source attribute, right? We'll say attribute source. I want to change it to the URL poster. I want to set it to that, right? Okay, I have the image, and I'm going to append to the LI. Okay, so let's see what that comes out to be. There it is, right? There's some of them don't have an image. So Avatar 2 doesn't have an image, right? The movie hasn't come out yet. So Avatar does. The Last Airbender has an image. Tomorrow Never Dies. Avatar? What? Avatar 4? What? The plot is unknown. I guess they made a placeholder just in case, right? None of these have. Okay, this one has image. Blah blah blah. Oh, that's the game. The game. Okay. All right. So we have this. How about? Well, we want to be able to do this on demand, for instance, when you click on something, right? That you can type the right, like an user interface, right? Like you say maybe an input field, right? ID title, right? So and maybe a button. How's that? You have a button that says ID get movie. So get movie, right? So and what we want to do is not render this, but do this AJAX only on demand, right? Only when we click that button, right? So what we might want to do is we might put this AJAX call maybe inside of a click event handler, right? We might say grab the button get movies, get movie, right? Get movie or get movies? Get movies, right? We're going to say dot click, right? And that's our function, right? So all this AJAX will only execute when we click that button, okay? Right? All right, so let's do that. Let's render here. So right now it's hard-coded. The URL is hard-coded, so when we click on get movie, it gets that. Notice, see how long it took? Right? We don't want to block the browser for that second or so, right? Right. So instead, what we want to be able to do is we want to look at the ID and have the ID as a parameter, right? So let's see. We're going to do a break here, and maybe here have a placeholder title. So what we're going to do here is, when we click, we're going to grab the title, var title. We're going to grab it from the input whose ID is title. Yes? We're going to grab the value of that input field. Okay? Now we have the value of the input field, and we can just plug it in here, right? We can say, right, we can just, put it in here. Let's see, like that, right? And put title in here. Okay, does that work? Wait a minute. Why is it complaining? Why are you complaining? Oh, because it doesn't have the URL format. I think it'll work. Let's try it. So let's try Star Trek. Okay, Star Trek, The Adventures of the USS Enterprise, right? Right. So notice that here are all the various movies for Star Trek. Or we might have maybe 007. I don't know if that's going to work. Get movies. GoldenEye, 007, right? Xbox, Quantum of Solace. Right, all these are movies and games and whatnot. See that? Right. So we have we have access to data, right? And we can render it. We could right? We can bookmark them, right? This is my favorite, right? And we would store it somewhere in our data model, right? We'd say this is our favorite. What would we save if we say this is our favorite? We would save what? The ID, right? Right. If you remember, if you notice, each one of these has an ID, right? Let's see. Each one of these, if you look at the object, it has an ID IMDb. You see that? It has an ID. I don't know if they have their own IDs. Release dates. I guess IMDb. Let's see if you can retrieve by IMDb. I'm not sure. Let's see. Can you retrieve by IMDb? I don't know. Can you retrieve by IMDb? You can retrieve by title, format, business, blah, 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 filter, TV, exact, limit, offset, actors, unique name, format, maybe not, unique name, actor trivia, blah, blah, blah. Let me see. What's a field? IMDb ID, right? IMDb ID. There's only one. Really? Because the idea is that you want to be able to store something in your database saying, oh, these are my favorite, right? And you don't want to copy any of this data because this data already lives in somebody's database, right? Why replicate it, right? The only thing you might want to store is a some kind of foreign key, right? So these IDs would be perfect. It would allow you to say, oh, these are my favorite 3 movies out of the millions or whatever, thousands. Just retrieve these 3, right? So I can show those 3. But looks like you can't query. Let's see, IMDb music, blah blah blah. Blah. Search by search by IMDb ID parameters. Look at that. Parameter required. Okay. Well, let's see. All right, so what's the URL? So the URL, send request to here, right? And, okay, that's the URL. And it says that I should be able to plug in the IMDb parameter, right? So IMDb equal, and then the ID, what was the ID that we had earlier? One of our movies. How about this one? That was for single player, a new GoldenEye, right? Let's try that. Jackson, there it is. A single player, a new GoldenEye. Yeah, see that? So the only thing you need to retrieve or to store in your database, right, is this that ID, right? With that ID, you can retrieve any of this data later if you want to display it. So for instance, what you might do in your database, you might store perhaps, the only thing that you might store in your database is the IMDb ID, right? Maybe the URL to the poster, perhaps, right? And maybe the title, that's all, right? Maybe you replicate these things in your database so that you can provide maybe like a summary in your application, in your web application, right? Like for instance, in my profile, I might show my favorite movies, right? And I shouldn't have to go get any data from my remote server for this, these 3 trivial things. Yes, maybe the poster, the title, and the ID. But if I click, I want to see the details, who the actors were, the plot, any of that stuff, right? Then I can use the IMDb ID to retrieve the full details for that movie. You see that? Right? So when I go to a details page, I can use that ID to fetch, again, using AJAX, I can retrieve all the details for that particular IMDb. Does that make sense? Okay, right? Right, so between those two, right, between those two things, being able to query, right, for any number of movies, being able to store an IMDb ID, right? How do we store it? Well, right now, the only place we can store it is in local storage, right? That's all we know up to this point, right? Like we did last week. But ideally, you would store it in your database, right? You would say, this is my favorite, this is my favorite, this is my favorite, right? And each time you favorite something, you go back to the server saying, hey, you know, he favored this movie, he favored this movie, he favored this movie. The IMDb is, the title is, and the URL of the image is, and that's it. Right? Store this because I want to remember these things, right? Right, and you store them in the database, right? And you show and you use it for displaying the summary. That makes sense? Is everybody okay? All right. All right. Let's see. Notice that the mechanism. Can I close this? Can I remove this? Oh. Anyway, notice that the mechanism by which we are building this, see the mechanism we're building is kind of ad hoc, right? It's kind of error prone, right? We're generating HTML from JavaScript. You see that? That's typically considered bad practice, right? JavaScript is not a very good language for generating HTML. Right? It's very error prone. You can make mistakes here, right? You know, you missed a pointy bracket, right? Maybe you got confused and you were doing this, which is perfectly fine, right? But it's a wrong. You know, I really mean to create an UL. I don't mean to get an LI. I mean to create one, right? So that's considered to be bad practice. Another issue is that I am dependent. I am totally dependent on knowing the structure of the HTML in my JavaScript code. So it's a very tight bonding, right, between my JavaScript and my HTML, right? That's also bad practice, right? Because if tomorrow I decide that these are not ULs, but they're table rows or table data, right? I want to render as a table instead. I need to go back and update my JavaScript, okay? This is very, very hard code to maintain, okay? So let's look at an alternative way of doing this. Okay, let's look at an alternative. I'm going to copy this. Where is it? AJAX. I think it's under here. Copy, paste. And I'll stop this. And I'll rename it. I'll rename this 001. Okay. All right. So instead, what I want to be able to do is provide. Perhaps I want to provide some kind of template, right? Because if this is the designer, right? If they're the designer, they probably have here already, right, some mock-up on what it should look like, right? And they don't want to do this in JavaScript. They want to do it in HTML, right? Using the latest, you know, WYSIWYG HTML editors, right? They don't know JavaScript. Well, maybe they might, but usually don't, right? So they want to stick to the HTML and say, well, I want the title here, right? Class title. I want the title here, right? So this is a movie, right? Then I want the plot here, class plot, right? And here we have. Do we have something which we can copy? Yes, let's copy something. Let's copy this up to here. Copy it there, right? This is Skyfall, so let me copy that. That's the title. I just want to see how it looks. Right? and maybe the image. So I went through a lot of trouble creating this look and feel, right? You know, I have all my classes, image or poster, and so copy image URL. So I have it here, paste it. Oops, 001, right? Yeah, so I went through a lot of trouble styling this, right? I make all my colors, my fonts, my padding, and I don't want the developer screwing up with my layout, right? Okay. So what the developer is going to need to do is we want to use that template, right? We want to use this template, okay? And perhaps we might create here and say this is a template. This is a template, right, that we want to use for all our items, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is the following. Instead of creating this on the fly, right, what we're going to do, we still want the data, right? We still want the data. We still want the data, but we're going to build it. We're going to build this in a different way. We're going to build this in a different way. We're going to get the top level UL because we know that we're going to be adding a whole bunch of LIs in here, yes? But then we want a template, right? We want a template. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, but sorry, this is instead of this being UL, we're going to say parent. Right? So it's a generic parent. I don't know if it's UL, right? Whatever it is. I'm not going to empty it yet. If I empty it, what's going to happen? I'm going to lose the template, right? So before I empty it, I better grab that template, okay? Right? So let me grab the template. var template. It's going to be from the parent. I want to find the template. Okay? And I'm just going to print it out just to make sure that I grabbed it, but it's not null. And I'm not going to empty it for now. I will empty it in a second. I just want to print it. Let's see. And get. Oops. What am I missing? Colon. Where is this? Oh, I never give it a name, right? Okay, Skyfall, Gravity Falls. What? All right, so I am grabbing the template. There it is, the LI. See that? I have the templates. I have the template. Now that I have the template, it's okay for me to blow it away. Okay, it's okay for me to blow it away. I have the templates. With that template, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone that template, right? I'm going to clone the template, and I'm going to replace the content of that template with my content, right? Instead of the dummy title content that was there, I'm going to replace that content with mine, right? So I'm going to clone that. I'm going to clone it. I'm going to say var the item. This is going to be the item. I'm going to clone the template. So I'm going to say template.clone, right? And the item, I'm going to say, okay, fine. Now I need to replace each one of the things in the clone, right? Let's try just adding it to the parent. I'm going to say parent dot append the item. Okay. Let's try what happens. I notice that in the template we only have one, right? We only have one. This is the original template. This is the original template. And let's do Skyfall. Let's do get. See what happens. Notice that it's been cloned many times. See that? It's been cloned many times, but I never replaced the content that was there, right? So it's using the same template over and over and over and over. We need to replace each one of the pieces, right, in the template. All right. So let's see. I'm going to replace. Let's see what the template is. I want to replace the title with my title, the plot with my plot, the poster with my poster. Okay, so let's do that. Let's say I'm gonna in the item before I append it. I'm gonna say item, find the title and replace its HTML content with my title. Okay, and find the plot and replace its content with my plot. Right, and find the what's it called? Poster, and change its source attribute to be my URL poster. And then append it. Right? Right. So now if I go back, right, that's my template, right? That's my template. And I type in, Star Trek. There it is. So now we have Star Trek, the motion picture, right? Star Trek 3, Star Trek. We have each one of the versions of the Star Trek are here, right? Using that template, right? So if tomorrow, right, somebody wants to style this, right, and wants to say that, the plot, right, in style, that the plot, right, needs to be the background color, right, needs to be yellow or whatever, right? Right, if that's what the template says, I do keep the same styling, right? I am oblivious to whatever they use. They could use whatever. They could change this and say, I don't want a UL. I want a table, right? I want this to be a table, and the parent will be what? The parent would be here's a table, right? And the table is made up of what? It's made up of a table T head, right? And then inside of T body, maybe that's the parent, right? That's the parent. And the template is what? It's a table rows, right? So the table body is the movies, right? So I can say ID. Let's replace this. Let me move this here. Let me how do I do this? Wait, I'm gonna move this here. All right, the UL goes away. This is gonna be my table body now, T body. Right, and these will be table rows, right? The template is now table row, right? And these are what? Table datas, maybe? TDs, maybe? TDs. This one is a TD, and this is a TD as well. Oh wait, no, this is another TD, and the image is inside of the TD. Okay. So if I refresh, notice that it changes to a table, right? And if I change this to groundhog, is that one word? Groundhog? No, it isn't, right? It's not gonna find. Oh, there it is. Notice that the format, I was able to change the format, right, in 2 seconds, right? But my JavaScript is, right, does not care what the layout is. You see that, right? So you could imagine, right? You could imagine that what the heck? Charlie and the boys. Huh? Maybe I don't want to have some inappropriate content here. But you see how I was able to create this independency between the JavaScript and the template. Make sense? So this would be the beginnings. This could be the beginnings of a generic way, right, of mapping a JavaScript framework to a HTML, right? I mean, we could generalize this even more, right? We could generalize it so that these classes, right? These classes map the names of the fields that come back from database, right? Right. If I could generalize that, just like ORMs in database, right? If you stick to the naming convention that right, if the name of the tables are going to map to names of your classes, and the name of the fields and the columns are going to match, you know, properties in your classes, right? If you follow that naming convention, then a lot of things happen for free. Yes. Well, something here, we could do something similar, right? If we could match and say the classes in your local HTML, if they match the field names of the data that comes back from the database, a lot of things could happen for free. Okay, and that's where we want to go when we look at Angular. Right? When we go to Angular, it's a framework that allows you to bind things backwards and forward between the front end and JavaScript, so that you don't have to do any of this. Right? A lot of this is you know, it's a lot of grunt work, right? It's a lot of things that you will find yourself doing over and over and over, right? It's a lot of boilerplate code here, right? You know, an event handler, some HTTP requests, and then map the data that comes back to a a data model, map it to a front end, right? So let's introduce, with that being said, let's introduce Angular, okay? Which will automate a lot of this stuff, right? Instead of iterating over these things, we're going to be able to use these kinds of templates and iterate over arrays in the model. Okay, all right.